My name is Hans de Waal, and I'm a solution consultant at Amexio Belgium, and I'll be your moderator for today. So welcome to today's webinar. You don't have an AI challenge, you have a data challenge. Or maybe better put, you have a content challenge. Some practical information to start with. The webinar will take approximately 40 minutes, including a Q&A session at the end. All attendees will be in listen-only mode, so if you do have any questions, please send them through the questions tab in the GoToWebinar panel. Also note that this is being recorded for distribution purposes post-event. Let me first give a short introduction on who we are and why this topic is important to us and also to you. Unstructured data, content, is at the heart of everything we do, and our mission is simple: help our customers turn their content into real measurable value. We support organizations in their internal digital collaborations and document management, in their external communication towards customers, and in highly regulated industries where XML-based structured content management is essential. Across all these areas, the impact of AI has been massive. And just like organizations spent the last decade investing heavily in data science, we believe that the combination of content management and AI deserves its own name, content science. Now, when it comes to data, for years, the focus was almost entirely on structured data, what sits neatly in databases and tables. But what about unstructured data? All those documents, emails, PDFs, images. For most companies, that's around 80 to 85% of their information. And historically, governance around that unstructured content barely existed, mainly because there was no real driver to invest in it. AI has changed that. Suddenly, we have these powerful tools that can unlock the value of all that hidden content and even automate content-driven processes. But that only works if organizations start paying attention to that content, treating it as a strategic asset and applying proper governance principles. And that's what content science is all about. To tell you more about the ins and outs of content science, let me present to you the speaker of today, Tom Laurès. Tom is our solution director and an expert on the field of content science. So Tom, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Hans. I hope we're audible because I think we had some issues with the sound earlier on. So, okay. Thanks, Hans. Welcome, everyone. So I'd like to kick things off with a brief reflection on, let's say, the whirlwind of discussions happening around AI right now. Because AI is everywhere, not just in tech circles, but on the front pages of the daily news. And especially in the last few days, there's been a lot of talk about AI's potential financial bubble. And if you're already as old as I am, and you also went through the dot-com boom, then this probably sounds quite familiar. But unless you've put all your money in OpenAI, Anthropic, or NVIDIA, should you really worry about this? Well, our belief is that even if there is a financial bubble, AI isn't going anywhere. So just like the internet survived the dot-com crash, AI is already a part of our lives. It's part of our businesses, and it's only going to grow from here. So the financial hype, well, that might come and go, but our firm belief is that the tech and the changes it's bringing are really here to stay. A second big debate around AI these days is more philosophical, ethical, well, it's maybe even existential, and it's the clash between the AI optimists and the AI doomers. On one side, you've got optimists like Peter Hinson, Sam Altman, Mark Andreessen, you name them, who say that we should really push AI forward as fast as possible, even take the shortcut to a kind of super intelligence, if you like. So they believe it could diseases and hunger, fix energy issues, well, in short, solve all world problems. And then there are the doomers who worry that advanced AI, especially that super intelligence, could destroy societies or even wipe us out completely. And that's a big and important and even somewhat frightening debate, but for now, it's mostly hypothetical, of course, since super intelligence is not yet a reality. And there's even doubt if it will ever be so. So it's not something shaping our daily lives and our daily businesses just yet. And then there's this third debate, and that's the one we're really focusing on today. And this debate almost goes against the AI optimist story. So it's about the real impact of AI, not just the market valuation. Question here is is AI itself becoming a bubble? Have we maybe been too optimistic about the technology and the productivity gains it would bring? Well, this debate it really heated up over summer when MIT, well, they came out with a study saying that 95% of AI pilots are failing, showing zero ROI, return on investment. Gartner, well, they from their side reported that 73% of organizations are actually losing money on AI right now. So, have we maybe been overestimating the potential of AI and generative AI in particular? Well, our firm belief is that the lack of ROI is not because the technology is immature or is totally overhyped. We're convinced that the lack of ROI has more to do with execution and that it's a problem that we can fix. So, our claim today is that it's not the quality of the AI models, the quality of the AI tooling that's causing these projects to fail. And the MIT report also makes it very explicit, as you can see in this excerpt from the management summary. So when they compared 5% of AI projects that succeeded with the 95% that didn't, model selection was not the differentiator at all. In other words, the technology as such works, the models are powerful. It's the execution that often fails one way or another. In fact, we can even say that AI models have become, well, maybe a little boring even. So this graph shows benchmarking results from LM Arena. So LM Arena is a public platform that compares all the major models. And as you can see over time, models from OpenAI, from Anthropic, Google, Mistral, they all end up performing in roughly the same range. So for most common AI use cases, the specific model flavor, so to say, well, it doesn't really matter. They're all good, they're all strong. That's not where success or failure is decided. So what does make the difference then? Well, when we look at research, there's three big reasons for AI project failure that consistently show up. First factor for AI project failure is lack of process redesign. And honestly, this gave me a bit of a flashback to about 15 years ago when we watched digital transformation programs fail left and right. Why was that? Well, often because organizations simply copied their physical process into the digital world. So no redesign, no rethinking, just let's say a digital version of the same old thing. And we are seeing the exact same pattern today. So companies, what do? They sprinkle a bit of AI automation into their existing workflows and then wonder why nothing truly changes. Well, if the process itself isn't reimagined to take full advantage of AI, you're not transforming, you're just decorating. Second factor for failure, and that's especially when working with off-the-shelf AI tooling like Microsoft Copilot, is lack of adoption support. And this one will sound familiar too. About 8 years ago, many Microsoft 365 rollouts flopped because IT basically flipped the switch and then they said, here you go, people, good luck with it. No guidance, no coaching, no change management. And also here, history is repeating itself with AI tools. People don't magically change their habits just because a fancy new AI assistant is available. If you think about it, if you've started every Word document from a blank page for about 20 years, suddenly asking an AI to draft it for you doesn't feel natural at all. It takes time and it takes change support. And then the third factor, your data. Any AI tool is only as strong as the data you feed it. If your content is messy, if it's outdated or just plain crappy, then your AI output will be messy, outdated, and crappy too. That's very simple. The model doesn't magically fix bad data, it just amplifies it. And it's this third factor, your data, that we'll highlight in the remainder of this webinar. So why do we think data or content are the key to AI success? To sum it up, models are getting a bit boring. RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is starting to deliver real wins in organizations. AI agents, they are quickly, let's say, climbing the hype curve, but nothing works without good data. So good data is like the hidden part of the iceberg. It's the foundation that makes all the cool AI stuff actually work and deliver results. So that's what we'll focus on for the rest of the webinar, the most common data/content challenges we see across our customer, what's really going wrong behind the scenes there, and more importantly, also how you can actually deal with those challenges and fix those issues. Let's start with the challenges. When our customers start implementing their first AI agents or really any AI initiative, we consistently see struggles in three key areas. First one, availability. Where is your data? Where is your content actually stored? And how easy is it for your AI tools to access it, to retrieve it, and to use it as a reliable foundation? Second issue, quality. Is your data accurate? Is it up to date? Is it relevant to the context in which it's applied? And quality has many dimensions, and we'll walk through all of them today. Third one is security. Are you protecting your data properly? Are you staying compliant with all relevant regulation? And are you sure that your agent will not reveal potentially sensitive information? Now, for us, these three pillars, availability, quality, security, they form the foundation of any successful AI project. And if even one of them is more or less shaky, your AI initiative will be shaky too. So let's dive into each challenge now, look at practical, actionable ways to overcome them. Starting with availability. So what do we typically find when we explore a customer's content management landscape, especially in larger organizations? Well, in one word, we find complexity. Content is scattered across, let's call it, a kind of patchwork of content silos. Some systems, they were inherited through acquisitions. Others were brought in as quick fixes, like a new tool to help marketing manage video. Invoices, they might still sit in SAP. And then, of course, there's always some shadow IT employees using tools like Dropbox to quickly share files with external partners. It's no surprise that this fragmentation creates all kinds of challenges. Employees will struggle to find the information they need. Security becomes much harder to enforce. And of course, maintaining these platforms is expensive, both in cost and in effort. But in the age of content science and AI, the age where we are now, this problem gets even more painful because your AI tools rely on access to the right content. And when that content is dispersed across 5, 6, maybe 10 different systems, making it available becomes a serious challenge. Imagine you're building a finance agent. It may need customer data from Salesforce, invoices from SAP, policies stored in both Microsoft 365 and OpenText. Now, that's really a lot of different doors to unlock here. So how do you actually make that happen? And we see three main approaches to making dispersed content accessible for your AI tooling. So let's walk through each of them in more detail. First, the most traditional option is consolidation, migrating everything into a single platform, kind of a single source of truth, as we say, that makes it much easier for your AI systems to tap into the content they need. And we've actually seen quite a bit of consolidation with our customers over the past few years. But to be honest, most of those consolidation projects, they weren't started because of AI. They were started because of cost pressure. A lot of CIOs these days, they are in cleanup mode. Their focus is on simplifying their IT landscape and cutting back the number of platforms they need to support. As such, improved content availability for AI is more of a positive side effect of this wave, because obviously when you apply that cleanup to your content management landscape, it does make things easier for AI. Fewer systems means fewer obstacles for your AI tools to get to the right information. What do we see on the other side? Despite this consolidation wave, especially in large organizations, it's still rare to have one platform that actually holds all content. The reality is often still too messy for that. So that brings us to the other two options for making dispersed content accessible to your AI system. So let's also take a look at those other two alternatives. If you still have multiple data or content sources that your AI needs to access, the most traditional and the most obvious solution is integration through connectors or plugins. Now, in most conversations, those two terms, connectors, plugins, they get used interchangeably, and rightly so. But some vendors, they do make a distinction. So let me quickly explain the difference between the two essential mechanisms that we see. Connectors, well, they are typically mechanisms that collect the required data from different source systems on a regular basis, and then they add it to the research index of your AI platform. Clear example here, Microsoft Copilot connectors. They ingest content from external systems into Microsoft Graph. And once the content is in the Graph index, Copilot can then use it for its AI features. Now, there are two important things to keep in mind here. First, because connectors ingest the data at specific intervals, the data is not real time, it's near real time. Second thing, those connectors are read-only. So if your AI agent needs to update something in an external system, this approach won't work. So what about plugins then? Plugins use APIs, or today often the Model Context Protocol or MCP, which means they can work in real time and they're not limited to reading data. So they can also write back to external systems when needed. And while I use Microsoft as an example here for connectors, this applies to pretty much every AI platform out there, Mistral, Anthropic, you name them. They all come with their own library of connectors and extension options. So connectors and plugins are powerful tools, but two more things to keep in mind is that they sometimes require additional licensing, so they might come at an extra cost. And you'll also want to look closely at how they handle permissions, because not all of them fully enforce end-user access rights out of the box. And that brings us to the third way of integrating different sources. And this one is fairly new, and it's really an AI-specific approach. And we often refer to these as content pipelines. A good example of such a content pipeline technology is unstructured.io. How should you think about it? Well, you can think of content pipelines as the next evolution of connectors and plugins. So they still pull content from different source systems. So in that sense, they work similar in the same way, but they go a lot further in what happens before the content reaches your AI tool. So instead of just collecting the data, they apply a whole series of pre-processing steps like cleaning the content, categorizing it, enriching it, sometimes even transforming formats. All this to make sure the content is in the best possible state before it lands in your AI repository. So in this case, it's not just grab and push, it's collect, improve, structure, and then deliver. So let me make this a bit more concrete with an example here. So let's imagine you want to make content available from a system like OpenText, for example, to your AI platform. So what does a content pipeline actually do in that case? First, it pulls the content from OpenText in the usual way, so nothing new here. But then comes a real magic, and the pipeline applies a whole series of extra processing steps to upgrade the quality. Take the example on the slide. You've got a PDF that contains some text, it contains an image, a table. Instead of just handing that PDF over as is, the pipeline breaks it down and starts enriching it. So it can run, for example, OCR, optical character recognition, to extract clean searchable text. It can process the image and generate a description of what's in it. It analyzes the table, produces a structured summary or explanation of its contents, and so on. And all of that enriched information, now nicely structured, is then passed on to your AI index. Now, the reason this pre-processing step matters so much is quite simple. The more structured, the more complete, the more well-described your content is, the better your AI will perform. So in a way, these content pipelines form the bridge between the first challenge, availability, and the next one we'll look at, which is quality. As I mentioned earlier, content quality has many different dimensions. So for today, I'm going to focus on 4 of them. First, classification, things like content types and metadata. Second, container structures. Think about sites, think about folders. third, versioning. 4, lifecycle management. So those are the 4 areas that we'll unpack next. First, let's go back to a typical customer's content management landscape. So what do we actually find when we open up one of their repositories? First, we see this ever-growing, extremely deep folder structures. Then we see version management happening through file names, usually also without any further naming convention at all. And finally, we see metadata setups that were started with good intentions, but the fields are either empty or they are filled in completely differently by each employee. So this is already difficult for us as humans to work with. Well, it's just as difficult, sometimes even more difficult for AI to work with. And here there's a common misconception that AI will somehow save us from bad information architecture, that it will magically bring structure where we've been creating chaos for years. In reality, it's the opposite. Bad information architecture will kill your AI performance. So let's tackle these 4 quality dimensions one by one. We start with categorization. Content types, metadata, they've always been fundamental in content management, whether it's distinguishing an invoice from an HR policy or tagging an invoice so we know it belongs to customer A and not customer B. But in many organizations, these features have never been used consistently if they were used at all. And in the age of Gen AI, this is now backfiring. It's backfiring big time because Gen AI as such is great at interpreting content. It's great at interpreting content, but only up to a point, and usually only in broad general terms. So if you want tools like Copilot to perform well on your data, so on your specific business content within your specific organizational context, then it absolutely needs consistent categorization. It needs content types, it needs metadata. Now, there's also some research about it, and research showed that applying consistent metadata can improve search accuracy by up to 15%. And that might sound like not a lot, 15%, but in reality, it's really the difference between an AI agent that creates value and one that just costs you money. So, how do we actually get this right? If you want high quality content, you do need metadata, but at the same time, balance it. Don't overdo it. It's far better to have, say, 3 mandatory fields that are consistently and accurately filled than 8 optional fields that are only half completed. So it's quality over quantity here. In practice, if you look at the practical side of things, we see that embedding metadata, for example, directly into document templates already nudges employees to fill them out. And AI can help too here. It can suggest metadata values, but you still need a human in the loop to review and confirm. If you don't have that human in the loop, you risk creating a kind of AI feedback loop, of course, where mistakes keep reinforcing themselves, and that will definitely hurt your accuracy in the long run. Second dimension about quality is container structures, things like sites, things like folders. And these are tightly connected, of course, to whether or not you use metadata. Because if you don't use metadata, you almost have no choice but to build very deep folder structures. And you end up using these folder levels as a kind of alternative organic labeling system. But there's a problem with that because deep folder structures hurt AI accuracy. And let me explain why. Because it's not always so visible. Reason is that, first of all, some AI systems completely ignore folder paths as part of the context. Now, in that case, your 8-level deep folder hierarchy adds 0 value. It's not a replacement for metadata. And then there's the other side. Other AI systems that do consider folder paths, but in most organizations, those paths have grown organically over years. They're inconsistent, they're sometimes confusing, and definitely they're not applied in a structured way. So if that's the case, instead of helping the AI, they will just create extra noise. So the general message here is simple. Keep the world, keep your container structures, keep them flat. So how do you manage that in practice? Well, it's actually pretty simple. You want to flatten your container structures, basically avoid having more than 3 levels of folder nesting. And if you're dealing with existing deep folder structures, try to automatically flatten them by turning some of those folder levels into metadata instead. In fact, for some of our customers, we set up automatic mappings that convert folder structure into corresponding metadata values. And this helps in a way strike the balance between how employees traditionally organize things, that is with folders, and what AI really needs, which is consistent metadata. Third dimension is versioning, and this is a big potential source of AI errors. So here's the thing, most AI systems, they can't really tell the difference between old and current versions just by looking at file names. But what do you see in practice? Many organizations, versions are still managed as separate files with suffixes like v1, v2, vfinal, or what else. So strange thing though is that literally every content management platform already has automatic version control built in, but few organizations, or let's say few people, few employees use it consistently. So imagine here an employee asking an HR AI agent about remote work policy, but that agent's working from different versions of the policy with those versioning suffixes. What will happen? Honestly, we don't know. The AI will just pick the version it thinks is most relevant at that moment, but it won't interpret the version suffix in any case. Solution, I'll use built-in automatic version management. Forget about naming conventions, forget about version suffixes. They won't help. They will only create confusion. The only reliable way for your AI tools to pick the current version of a policy or any file in that sense is by relying on the content platform's built-in versioning system. And the last dimension when it comes to quality is lifecycle management. Think about this. When was the last time you actually archived or deleted a whole site or even just a file from your content management system? Most people are basically hoarders. We like to collect things, but we're often afraid to throw anything away, even if it's outdated or actually gets in the way of finding what's important. Take this example, a meeting from 2015, like the one in the screenshot. Do we really still need to keep that? Or maybe should it have been archived or deleted ages ago? All this hoarding creates what we call rot data, stuff that's just cluttering up your system without any value. And rot stands for redundant data, like duplicates, obsolete data, like old policies that don't apply anymore, and trivial data, like draft files. Again, research shows that up to half of the content that organizations manage is rot, half of it. And that's not just expensive to store, it also drags down employee productivity and it seriously hurts AI performance, of course. So how do we fix this? Well, we basically need to become the Marie Kondo of content management. For those who don't know Marie Kondo, she's the kind of guru who teaches people how to fold clothes, how to organize their wardrobes, how to declutter their homes, and so on. And in practice, this implies having both a short-term and a long-term cleaning plan. In the short term, we use tools like the one you're seeing here, which is 8-point Opus. And this kind of tool can automatically scan your content for rot data using different criteria, and it can then help you to do a serious spring cleaning on your existing platform. For the long term, these tools stay active, but you also want to get proactive. That means putting strong content governance in place, so content is only kept as long as it's actually needed and relevant, no more and no less. So in phase one, it's all about detecting and cleaning out the rot content. And for next phases, it's about putting proper proactive governance in place to keep things under control moving forward. Final challenge we have here with the data is security. One last time, let's take another look at a typical customer's content management setup. We dive a bit deeper now into permissions, and what do we find when we check permissions? Usually, There's permission inheritance based on really broad user groups, but it's combined with a bunch of extra ad hoc permissions handed out to a mix of internal and external users. Well, this is basically every CISO's worst nightmare, but it's very real. And with AI in the picture, these security risks, they only get much, much bigger. When I talk about this topic, I always like to bring up this tweet. It's from about a year ago from Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff. To put it mildly, Mark's not a big fan of Microsoft Copilot. And at that time, he claimed that when Joe Blow kicks off Copilot, they can see everything, including all the CEO's emails. So is Mark Benioff right here? Is he right? Well, yes and no at the same time. No, because technically Copilot and really any modern AI tool will only use content that Joe Blow actually has permission to access. But also yes, because in many organizations, as we've seen, Joe Blow's permission often go way beyond what they should. And that was, as in such, not a big deal when Joe Blow had to actively search for or he had to navigate to that hidden content. But now with AI's powerful retrieval capabilities, all that unexpected, that hidden content can pop up easily during any query or summary that is generated. You can think of AI a bit as the great disclosure. Right? It will pull in any piece of information you have access to, no matter what. And that means security is more important than ever before. So how do you fix this? Rule number one, logically, keep your permission model clear and transparent. Resist the urge to do ad hoc sharing. And if you do, because yeah, sometimes it's just necessary, make sure it's time restricted and can be centrally monitored at least. Rule number two, clearly identify your sensitive information so you can protect it and avoid this kind of accidental disclosure through your AI tools. And on the screen, you see an example. You can see an example of a tool that automatically spots, identifies sensitive data. And that can be based on things like social security numbers, credit card numbers, addresses, and so on. And then it highlights possible security risks based also on how broadly that content is shared and helps you update permissions right away. So also here, we've got tooling on the market to support you in that effort. So that sort of wraps up today's webinar. I think we're well within half an hour. Just quick summary of the three main challenges we covered. So availability, quality, and security. And I want to repeat this, our belief is that if you want to see real ROI, real return on investment on your AI project, then make sure that you address these before kicking off that project. All right, Hans, I hand it over back to you. Are there any questions at this point?
Yeah, thank you first, Tom, for the great presentation, the detailed presentation. Let me check the Q&A part. Hang on. No, yeah, there's one question I see. That's the following. Is there a difference in data challenges when using general AI assistants like Microsoft 365 Copilot versus AI agents?
Okay, yeah, that's indeed a good question, because in general, yeah, what we see is that if you are using those general tooling like Microsoft 365 Copilot, there's more challenge that you have, because those systems, they normally have very broad access to all the content you have access to. So you cannot really easily pin down what contents they will use to generate any replies. When you're using agents, on the other hand, you have more control over the data it uses typically. So you can more actually make sure that it only uses curated and safe content or information and data to actually use in the actions and the replies it gives. So in general, yes, for agents, your challenges will be a bit less than they are for general tooling.
Okay, that's clear. Thanks, Tom. Okay, that was the only question. Thank you everyone for attending today. We hope you enjoyed this session and found the topic relevant for you. As I mentioned at the start, the webinar was recorded, so in the next couple of days you will receive a link to the recording. Thank you all again for your time and have a wonderful remainder of the day. Bye.
Bye-bye.